I'm delighted that we have got Dr. Grossmann to be our opening speaker. 18 years ago, Michael Opel invited Karin Grossmann to do a presentation, a short conference on her and her husband's study about attachment, and for the German society at that time. And looking back, we were just talking about it this morning, I think this set some seeds in our chapter that have blossomed. It made a difference in my looking at the work, and Michael, and I'm sure for others as well. Karin Grossmann, together with her husband, Professor Grossmann, are pioneers in the study of attachment. They have, for instance, a long-term study from birth up until adulthood, around 22 of different families in Germany, to see how attachment affects the individual and how it stays permanent or changes over time. It's also interesting because they have taken extended field trips to other cultures like Japan, Provian Islands in Papua New Guinea, and even exotic places like California, where I come from. And what I've heard is that the results are the same. A secure attachment base is important even for us Californians. The title of the presentation today is The Added Value of Attachment for Clinical Work with Families. So help me welcome Dr. Grossmann up to the podium.
Good morning, and thank you all very much, the organizers, for inviting me to this beautiful city. We just had a small glimpse of it last night. And thank you all for coming such a long way. And I think all these songs really gave the message. Yes, bonding is important, and let's stay with it even if some irritations about it came about during the times. I named my talk The Added Value of Attachment Theory for Clinical Work because you all are clinicians. You all have skills and knowledge, and the art and science of therapy is something that is with you. My argument will be that to know a little more about the attachment system, attachment research, and its application will just sort of broaden your look at your own work and maybe at your clients. So as Jeff Gordon already said, the rooting of attachment theory and it seems your bonding work in psychobiology is something that we stress a lot. Let's start with the situation that a client comes to you, and what is his emotional situation? He's probably distressed beyond his own capacities to deal with it. Otherwise, he wouldn't look for help. His feelings are confused. He feels weak, that he can't handle the situation, and probably he's even disoriented. What should I do now? He hopes for that you, as the wiser and stronger and professional person, will help him. Help him find the orientation, and that you will support his own search for becoming competent again. So he seeks, when he comes to you, support, care, and guidance. Well, attachment theory would say his attachment system is highly aroused. Now, what is your challenge as a psychotherapist is that the way he is handling his own attachment feelings is something that you'll have to find out in order to be a very good guidance therapist. And of course, the handling of his own attachment feelings stems back from his knowing attachment as a child. So first of all, the basic assumptions of attachment theory that you will feel reflected in bonding therapy over and over again. The stronger and wiser person, now here we have examples of rhesus monkeys, will be there to protect you. And you need the protection if you're weak, if you're small, and if you are not very knowledgeable about your environment. And of course you wish that if you are weak and afraid, the strong one will fight for you. Now if you have gained enough self-confidence, security, then you will be able to explore again. You have to feel confident and secure in order to explore. So the first function is you need a haven of safety, a place to flee, to feel, to tank up security. And the second is, once you are more secure, you can explore again. Let me show you a little video clip of those researches done by Hardo. And as you can see, they were taken in 1958, so quite some time ago. And it shows really the principle of these two elements, the secure base and the haven of safety for a frightened young monkey. But it shows many elements of what I would like to show. Now, why don't you start? It's a silent film. At the time, Hardo only had black and white films, and we had to transfer and copy again. So it's not a very clear picture, but what you can see is that the infant monkey is afraid, it's being made afraid, and he has been raised only on a wire mother that fed him, but also on a cloth mother that did nothing but provide some comfort and cuddly terry cloth. So when he can come to his terry cloth mother, soft mother, he will first use her as a haven of safety, but then he will look around. Now, what is it that made me so anxious? So he needs the backup of security in order to be able to be curious again and look around and maybe even explore what made him afraid. Of course, this is the term to make familiar, to make something that was first frightening become familiar in his environment. What is the essence of attachment, and that is something that is picked up very nicely now by neurobiology, is relaxation. That a person can come to a calm state of mind, and that then the inner strength is rising to become more curious and exploring again. Here is the so-called playroom of the little monkeys, lots of things to explore. Of course, all very restricted, but here's his comforting mother, so the little monkey is released. First, he needs the secure base, the haven of safety. So he clutches with hands and body and head and gains some security. Then he can move off and explore. First of all, he makes sure that his mother is not going to run away. Human mothers sometimes run away, which is frightening for small infants. But then he can go off, explore one thing, but when it becomes too stressful, he'll need the haven of safety again. So this is the star-like pattern that you often see in young children in the playground. They need to know where mom sits or daddy, and then they can play, and when something becomes too frightening, they will go back and re-tank some security. So you see this back and forth, exploring, coming back. Now this paper was giving some noises, and this was frightening for the young monkey. So he takes the frightening object back to the soft mother figure, and there he can handle it better because he is, on the one hand, gaining security, on the other hand, paces are not important for monkeys. So being able to gain some security makes him more curious, more daring. But if there is no haven of safety to cling to, the infant monkey and infants will not explore. They are so frightened, they have no way to relax, to get back their comfort. So you see stereotypic behavior, which is typical of stressful, overstressed. Now first he needs a long time on his terry cloth to become secure again. I'll have to go a little further because time is pressing. This is the basic assumptions of attachment theory. In human evolution, those infants who failed to be attractive to at least one older and wiser adult for her continuous investment in his survival. So the infant needed to be sweet and loving. If the infants failed to show separation distress, he would just move off and fail to have his security taken care of by a stronger person. And those infants who failed to attach to a stronger and wiser, who, on her turn, was willing to protect and care for a longer time for the young one, those really had no chances of survival. And this last picture that you see is a picture from old India, maybe not so old, that mothers gave away their babies and say, "Please, Europeans, buy me." Now, what is the fate of such children? The anthropologist said, actually, maintaining maternal commitment was once as important for an infant's survival as oxygen often, and often it still is. We know from recent wars, that infants are not spared. Even today, we have examples of lost children. For instance, children of enemy soldiers we saw from the Yugoslavian war, and they are not wanted. Children that are sold for slavery or prostitution, as we know they are. Sometimes institutions will exploit their children, even if they are, especially if they are orphans, for unhuman endeavors. And in history, there were long stories of children who were sent away by their poor parents to work as farm workers. And there, they had no protection and they were exploited again. So maternal commitment, parental commitment is still very important. This type of wish of a child to have a strong parent, protective parent, is so important that they will sometimes even deny their own traumatic experiences. The research of Scheringa and Zina says that post-traumatic stress disorder in children was higher when the parents were injured or the trauma happened to parents. And it was less strong when the children were traumatized if the parents then could care for them. So for the children, it's more important to have strong parents than to be strong themselves. If a parent, because of some of things that happen to them, is injured or is even just grieving or is ill, the child sees the parent as weaker. They are maybe crying, they lie in bed, and a weak parent can't protect, can't fight for the child. So the child is going probably to even aggress against the weak parent and maybe not being very obedient, may even push or say bad words. That is, they make the parent angry because an angry parent seems strong, and that's what the child wants. I've worked a little bit on a ward with children who were terminally ill with cancer. And what was surprising is that the children lied to their parents. They didn't want to see their parents crying, weak, and disappointed. They pretended, today it's much better. And then the parent smiles, reaches up, and the child perceives a stronger parent. This kind of strong parent that protects and cares for the child is a kind of external organization of an internal process within the child. You know that if a child is especially a baby, is cold, you put him on your body and you regulate temperature externally with your temperature. You protect the child from infections by keeping it clean and by nursing. Of course, you would protect the child from danger, And the relaxation and comfort in contact we have already seen. Today, as I said, neuropsychology, neurobiology has found attachment, and they say this. The function actually of the attachment system is stress reduction, which you can show in cortisol reactions. So by attachment, you have endocrine regulation. It affects oxytocin. I've seen the program. We will have a special talk on that. It affects the cortisol production and many other neurohormones. And so in that sense, to preserve the internal processes, it is very, very dangerous to lose the parent. You would lose your external organization. What has been found in the meantime is that these early attachment relationships actually tune in, make the stress regulation system more vulnerable or less vulnerable. As I said, the attachment system has been discovered now. The quality of nurturance, care and support, tune the brain system for sensitivity to stress. If there has been a lot of stress in infancy, there will be a heightened sensitivity to stress. More readily, the organism will be stressed. But if there has been a lot of tuning down of stress by comforting, by consoling, then the stress system will be less active under new stress. And the child learns very early, before language, whether the other person that is close to him will be comforting or not. So the trust in other people and other close people is trained very early. And of course, many of you know already that stress management in adults is linked to health-related outcomes. Here's a picture from Fakla that is just supposed to show a little bit of this process. If stress experience enter the brain over and over and over again without comforting in the meantime, those pathways that give the stress signal from neuron to neuron again and again will widen the path for stress signals. So a mild stress signal will already produce a strong reaction. If the child early enough derives reliable comfort from close ones, they produce another neurohormone. This is the gamma global butter acid. But this neurohormone manages to sort of take up cortisol. That's the mechanism in the brain. So there are receptors that if cortisol comes, they will sort of suck it up so that it doesn't overflow the brain. Now this is the basic of attachment, but not every child receives tender loving care all the time. So what we have now in terms of individual differences is patterns of attachment or attachment qualities. And there's something that is really pathological, that is attachment disorganization. So first let's look at the variations of attachment that is common in our society. Here I try to show you the attachment system. You may read about the attachment system and some people say, what is the system? The system is the following. The infant on the left side, or the weak one, you could say client, is distressed beyond his own capacities. They will show this, they will signal by crying or calling. So the feeling is expressed. Then the expression is usually transferred into behavior. The child tries to find the haven of safety. If the child finds the haven of safety, they will make contact, and this leads to relaxation, as I've just said, and to stress reduction. After a while, if the relaxation and stress reduction is sufficient, they will sort of refuel. And here, obviously, the fathers are also very, very important. I will come to that a little later. They will suck up security, that makes them daring again, curious. They can then move off to try dangerous things, which, if they are successful, will increase their self-esteem, and they will go on to explore, which we can call secure exploration. So the system says, if aroused, they need to signal, they need to behave, they need to get comfort, which makes them daring and explorative again, and then the attachment system is quiet. So that is the attachment system. If it is undisturbed, it is well functioning, and that would be the secure pattern. How does this regulation of the attachment system come about in a good way? The researcher of this is called Mary Ainsworth. She has done her studies in the 70s, last century, and we have done similar research in Germany. Sensitivity to the infant signals, and as you are all clinicians, I would say these are just as well as the sensitivity to the signals of the client. The older, wiser, and caring person, protective person, has to perceive the signal, has to first of all be open to perceive the signals of the weaker one. Signals near the body, the face, or the behavior. So do the signals send the message, I'm stressed? Or do the signals send the message, I'm not stressed, I'm fine, I want to play and explore? Then comes again, from the point of view of the weaker one, what are his competencies? And so the reactions should be appropriate to the competencies. Either the competencies are at a loss at the moment, so the child needs comfort, or challenge, yes, you can do it, I will support you. And the smaller the child, the more prompt the response has to be, so that the child can associate the signal, I cry, I approach, and then comes the comfort or the support. Now, people keep asking, what about spoiling? If I always react, I'm not spoiling the child. No, you have to judge it from the point of view of the child. If you are doing something for the child that he could actually do for himself, yes, you are an entertainer and a spoiler. But if you just answer and then notice what is the appropriate reaction, then it needs maybe comfort if it's overwhelmed, or challenge if it is competent. So from the point of view of the child, you can differentiate carefully spoiling from sensitivity. Within sensitivity, of course, is always communication, very basic to human development. If a child is very frightened, like the left one in a carnival feature close to Freiburg, the child needs words for her feelings. The young ones learn language. And also the child needs the explanation of what the others might be feeling, like the one behind the mask, maybe a young man who has fun, so the mask is only a mask. On the other picture, you see an older sister who is sort of halfway happy about the baby because the father is so engaged with the baby and she is left on the side. So she learns that because I love my father and because he loves the baby, maybe I will not hit the baby or give him pain. So the child learns tolerance of ambiguity by being accepted in her mixed feelings. Now, only one clip from our own longitudinal studies because we included mothers and fathers. We had observed the mothers and the fathers in the first 3 years in many different occasions. And if they had been sensitive, supportive, and accepting during the first 3 years, and this was important, this is a time before language is really developed, their children were more secure at 6, 10, 16, and 22 years. These are special tests, I will look at them in a minute. Their adolescents had a good relationship to their parents. They could still use them as a haven of safety at a secure base. And these adolescents were even quite able to cope with perceived rejections. These are little vignettes from friends. And they were named by others as somebody who is competent and whom we can rely on. These young adults, as 22-year-olds, they valued close relationships. And what is always very important is that they were willing to help if the partner was weaker at a moment, or willing to receive help if they were weaker in this one moment. And of course, these young adults were always considering what the other might think, so that their partnership seems to work well. Now, what about the second pattern, that is insecure? The attachment system for the avoidant pattern of attachment feels for the child like this. Your child is distressed. The parent may say, "Stop it, go to your room." So the child gets into trouble if they express negative feelings, if they express loneliness, if they cry. People, mothers sometimes even say, "Don't cry, don't bother me with that." So they would love to approach, but as a young child, the mother would push them away and say, "Go away, I don't have time for you." So the child gets in trouble with this most important attachment figure when they show distress, when they act on their distress, and thus they will not receive relaxation. The mother will not come and comfort at the moment when the child would need it. She may do at other times, but not when the child really needs it. So what is the alternative strategy for the child? I have to look after myself. I have to become self-reliant to a degree that seems even compulsive. And they also learn that the close others are not really trustworthy. You can't go to them. So they become slightly hostile. And they do explore, because that's their way out of trying to comfort themselves. But in a group, they are usually very uncooperative. They don't rely on others. They don't want to cooperate with others. So we could look, and other colleagues could look at the childhood of avoidance attachment. The child is angry, but in another situation, they are afraid to show anger because then they might be rejected by the most important protector of them. So they do have a fear of abandonment, but they don't show it. The play behavior for these children seems to serve to distract them. So you have an early form of intellectualization. In educational situations, colleagues of ours have studied this, the teachers do not expect compliance. They say they are not cooperative. The other children find them not very sympathetic. They feel actually annoyed by them because they are always sort of projecting hostility. The peers see them as unfair, dishonest, and they are not chosen as friends. So what they expect is actually happening. They will be rejected by their peers. So in a way, they are right in attributing hostility to others. They are very vulnerable to signs of reaction. I will come in my third part, I hope I'll get to it, how to handle it as a therapist. The second insecure pattern is still a pattern. The parents are still functioning as parents, but they have sort of blind spots. The parent of an avoidant child has a blind spot on needing the closeness. The parents of an ambivalent pattern of attachment have a blind spot when it comes to exploration, to supporting autonomy. These children, if they feel distressed or lonely, yes, they cry. And sometimes it's heard, sometimes not. They cry. They approach. But since they never know whether the mother is ready to react or not, whether the mother is busy, so they have a kind of a game. They can't predict, but sometimes they do get comfort and consolation. But because they don't trust that they will get it when they need it, they do also get very mistrusting. Will I get it when I want it? I have to cry louder. So because they don't get it when they sit up, only when mother wants it, they develop low self-esteem and they develop an attitude of closeness is never enough. I need more, I need more, I need more. And in that way, they are not daring, they have little exploration, and actually their attachment system is never really comforted. They are constantly high in their attachment feelings. How does that develop? The caregiver is preoccupied with other things. They don't really listen. They are not open. They perceive the baby as something nice to play with, but only when they are in the mood. Sometimes the caregiver is even jealous of attention of others. So for instance, in our study, mothers of ambivalent children didn't give them to kindergarten. They were afraid the child might like the kindergarten teacher more than herself. The child cannot predict availability, so they are really afraid to separate. They have a lot of terrible time to separate. And what the children have learned, if the mother is preoccupied with her own mind, you have to cry louder, you have to cling longer, you have to be more. The caregiver does not protect and does not care. Sometimes they do, but in times of stress, these parents have a very aggressive or withdrawn attitude. They have a kind of aggression that is sometimes only in the communication. They will tell the child, it's unwanted, I never wanted you, you don't deserve any love. Of course, aggressive sexual abuse is something that is for the adult and not for the child. So all of this is from the child's point of view, rejection of a person that should be comforting and protecting. Some caregivers even have role reversal, that the caregiver demands care from the child, which is not developmentally appropriate. And of course, some of the sexual abuse is really seductive. You want it, don't you? So the child is actually felt made guilty for the sexual abuse himself. And of course, a depressed mother has often fears of the ghost of the past, and that when a child approaches, this fear can come up. So the mother withdraws instead of being there to protect. Very, very distressing for children. So what is the attachment system looking like? The child is distressed. The child cries. The child tries to approach, but then there is the wall. The mother is either withdrawn, or retaliates, or is aggressive, or pushes the child away. So there is no stress reduction, there is no refueling. And that means for the child, I'm not worthy. I'm not even worthy to live. I'm not worthy to be helped. And so these children explore very little, and they are left with nowhere to go. Here's a little clip from a study from Turkey. This is a little boy who has been separated, a 1-year-old, from the parent, and the mother comes back. And first he tries this old strategy of avoidance, but then becomes more and more distressed. And what you will see is this element of distressed with nowhere to go, although the mother is present. This is still the student. The mother comes back. He sees her. He actually signals that he is distressed and will cry. But then he tries to keep himself with the toys. So first he does not go to mother. He distracts himself. But his first cry shows you that he is not really at ease. And the way he changes toys also shows you that he is upset. He's not really concentrating on the toys, but he's trying to distract himself from his distress. A more clearer sign you will see soon. He looks at the mother, but he can't go to her. He doesn't go to her, although he's quite upset. Now he fumbles at his clothes, which is also a sign of being upset, at a loss what to do. And now he signals, I'm distressed. Now look at this. She is there. She actually puts out her hands, but he can't reach her. He can't go. So this is the wall I was talking about. He's so upset. The contact would help him, but he is afraid, or he is for some reason can't accept her help. He gets very tired by this. He is highly distressed, and of course you can only end the situation. The mother will pick him up. But you can see how he is distressed, but he cannot reach out for help. Now he gets himself being picked up. But then there's another sign of this disorganization. He will hit his mother in the face. So hitting the only secure person to have in a strange environment, think of a very far travel and your only guide, you would not hit him to go away if you are in a strange environment with strange people. So this is disorganization as it looks like in children. Now when we do studies, of course we need measurements. The strange situation is a procedure for infancy. The attachment person is asked to leave the room, as you have seen sort of a little bit here. And then when the attachment person comes back, we can assess, is this person a haven of safety and a secure base? The child goes, fills up its security, and can explore again. In childhood, we do a lot of projective techniques, a puppet interview, and of course, if we do a separation, it will be a longer one. In adulthood, we can do the attachment interview, asking about their own childhood. Now, why is this knowledge of some value, of an added value to you as a therapist? If you know a little bit about avoidance, ambivalence, or even disorganization, you may use another approach to the distress of the client. Because the children themselves, they grow up in this family. They don't have a choice about their parents. Adults can separate, children cannot separate from their parents. And clinician Slade said, because children are motivated to preserve their attachment relationships, they will adapt, they will have to adapt to their primary caregivers. Whatever they wish, desire, protect. And this is, as you know, especially terrible in sexual abuse. But the children want to keep this attachment figure at their side. They want them to be their parents. And so they adapt, even if it's very distorted for their own development. So this goal of having the parent as a protector is the main goal, as I already said at the beginning. So this will probably impair their development, and they would know better if they could. So these kinds of early experience is something that the patient brings into the therapy. So when the patient, the client, comes with in a heightened state of distress, with a highly aroused attachment system, his memory is probably full of experiences. How did others respond when I was highly distressed? They will project the way their parents reacted to the therapist. So that is the ghosts of the past will enter into the consulting room. Jeremy Holmes has written about this. And another situation, like the strange situation, is when the therapy has to be has an intermission, like in vacation time or something else happens. So again, is the patient showing separation distress, and how does he handle all of this? So these kinds of behaviors informs the therapist of the client's state of mind. How do you, and how do our colleagues, as I said, we are researchers, we are not clinicians, how do our colleagues respond to a person when they think, oh yeah, there's a secure state of mind with respect to attachment? Because every person can meet with disaster, a child dies, cancer, whatever. So how do they respond? These people value connectedness, they value close relations, and they are ready to accept help and to become more competent by it. They expect empathy, they expect understanding and support, and they are able to repair social ties. So if the therapist accepts the needs of the child, it will be like a parent who accepted the need of the crying child. For instance, a secure mother responded to the question, when you were sad or upset, what did you do? When I had problems as a young child in school, or my brother was really mean to me, I cried. I went to my mother and told her about it. How did that feel? Safe, very safe. And it stayed that way. Once I just walked out of an apprenticeship that I did not like. I told her about it many days later. And she went to the boss, explained it, and sat down with me to find a new apprenticeship. So that is the essence of a secure relationship. Some people do not have a secure attachment in childhood, but later on, their partners or therapists can help them to earn security. This is something we call earned security. This is how this mother talks. My mother had a very bad temper and abused me, physically, with sticks and so, and psychologically, until I was 13 years old. Only then did my father manage to let me stay with him. When I became a mother, I was afraid to lose my temper and beat my child, because I would not know how to react. This is what she had experienced until the age of 13. How to react to my anger. But change was possible. My father and the therapist taught me that there are different and better solutions to handle anger when the child misbehaves. So I'm happy that my child is not afraid of me. So this is the summary. The client can ask for help, and accept help, is motivated to increase competencies, and shows high compliance. So the therapeutic approach is revitalizing the valued competencies. And of course, professional wisdom. And our colleagues always say, oh, if I have a patient with a secure state of mind, this will be a successful therapy. Now, what about the dismissing client? They usually do not show up in therapeutic or intervention systems because they think, I don't see a problem. Sometimes, though, they are forced by the partner, says, if you don't go to therapy, I will separate, or sometimes they have an own mental breakdown. So these patients are afraid of further rejection. They are afraid of close attachments because they will never bring comfort. They belittle their own problems. They don't want help. And they view attachment as dependency and weakness. So that is what they do not want. How do you go about it? Well, if you can convince the client that attachment strengthens competence, that shared wisdom is more than one wisdom, and shared loads are less than one load. If that client can remember how it feels to be rejected as a child, they are in a good way to accept that they are now reacting like a child who has been rejected. And sometimes this helps. What our colleagues say is that it's a difficult start with these patients, but it is relatively successful if you get to their childhood. The mother said, I cannot remember. I think I kept everything to myself, worked it out within myself. If I felt bad, it was nobody's business but mine. Did you ever feel like wanting to sit down on your parents' laps and be hugged? No. Maybe I did not know such behaviors. It just never entered my mind. And maybe you have seen those patients. I wonder if I should show the clip still?
5 minutes.
Yes, 5 minutes, okay. So I skip over. The ambivalent person will cling to you, he will dramatize his needs and his distress, and the therapy will need a lot of structure because these patients will call in the night and will come to your vacation home and so on. So they look for closeness, but they will never be more competent by all the help given. So very often our colleagues say these therapies will be unsuccessful because the child will look for another therapist that's better. So they are looking for love all over. The disorganized state of mind is the most difficult. These patients are usually hostile, non-compliant, and dangerous. They are afraid of losing control. They have sometimes dissociations. They have a loss of sense of reality. And the therapeutic approach, of course, is trying to get them back to reality, even sometimes forgiving the parents because of their own attachment history. Colleagues who work with borderline personalities say they see a lot of symptoms in the borderline personality as in disorganized attachment. This unstable, intense personal relationships, feelings of emptiness, the child doesn't know where to go, bursts of rage, chronic fear of abandonment, and intolerance of aloneness. So these people, Jeremy Holmes and Leah, say this may result from a disorganized attachment development. The last word belongs to John Bowlby, the founder of attachment theory. In conditions of adversity which evoke feelings of anger, fear, and sadness, either overt or expressed, potential, and unexpressed, breakdown of mental functioning is likely to occur. It is precisely on these conditions that the ability or inability to express thoughts and feelings to others and to seek their comfort and help proves such a crucial barrier. Those who during their childhood have met when in conditions of adversity with understanding responses will hope for something similar in the present crisis, whereas those who have met with rebuff and contempt during childhood will express the same when they are distressed during adult life.